So I think we'll start from here. So this is our question. How did social policy undergraduate students experience the online assessment period during the summer term of 2020? Yeah, so we're just gonna go through sort of like that order. And so our key question was like, so how did students experience the online examinations given that most people were at home during the 2020 summer exams? How did this differ between year groups given that there was sort of like a difference in like prior experience in terms of examinations in university? And whether in light of all these circumstances, whether sort of like the support that they received from both the department and the school were adequate. So we did a literature review to see what was out there, what was sort of like the key themes within like the challenges and opportunities faced with regards to online examinations in general. So the key challenges identified was sort of like the ability to of online examinations to like fairly and adequately assess their skills, their learning, and to safeguard against academic disintegrity, and as well as for online examinations to meet the diverse needs of students, given that there has been an increase in difference in the demographic as well as the sort of needs of students. But at the same time, online examinations also had produced a lot of opportunities whereby that there was generally positive attitudes to online examinations. Some students felt that it was a more authentic assessment experience given that it was open book, it was more applicable to real life, and that there was more flexibility given that usually online examinations have longer time frames. So in light of the current literature, our study aimed to sort of put what this means for LSE and what this means for social policy examinations in particular, given the difference in sort of experiences with different disciplines. So this is just a quote from one of the literatures that we looked after. So it's just sort of how continuous changes in examinations can meet increasing diversity in student needs. So to do this, we started off with a survey where we surveyed undergraduate social policy students in order to identify the key themes that we wanted to explore and what was sort of the predominant factors and challenges faced by students. So based on these results, we then moved on to a focus group interview with a group of students, both currently in their second and third year, in order to better understand specifically how they face these challenges and where exactly the gaps were. For example, if they found a certain aspect useful, in what sense was it useful? And we also conducted a one-on-one interview with a neurodivergent student to better understand the diverse needs of students with differing needs. Based on this, we then took the results from both and took them together, compared that against the school-wide survey in order to sort of produce the recommendations and results that we had.
Yeah, thanks, Arisha. I'll talk a bit more about results in the first two themes. So to give a bit of background for our survey, we have about half of first-year respondents and half of second-year respondents. Most of them lived with their family, and about half of them took the exams from outside the UK. And there were some differences in between the year groups. So even as both preferred one-week exams, first years found departmental support more useful and more second years deferred. And as for our focus groups, we also had even split between first year and second years. Moving on to our first theme about barriers to performance, we found that the most common barrier faced was mental health strain and was followed by unconducive home environments. So in our focus group, we found out that the open book, even as students found the open book format less stressful, preparing for exams could be quite isolating, especially for those who had to come home, those who moved home, and I guess that they had to balance different responsibilities. But overall, they did feel the online exams was a positive experience, and it did reflect their ability quite accurately. And this was similar to what was found in the school-wide survey about being away from campus was one of the more significant challenges. And this is just some quotes from our focus group. So we found that students talked about it being isolating. It could be quite lonely preparing for exams, and that hampered a bit of their preparation. And now moving to departmental support, students did find that LSE, the department, was able to alleviate these challenges that they faced, and having a point of contact really did help their experience. And then in our survey results, we found that students did use the different formats, different forms of support quite widely. So they used LSE Live workshops and office hours. And this was also something that was echoed in the wider school survey. But for our focus group, we found that even though it was generally quite a positive experience, he also talked about how participants were unaware of things like unofficial office hours and services that LSE Live offered, like essay writing workshops. So even though they were like very grateful to the department and they did feel that the departmental staff were very approachable, there were still some challenges to like reaching out for help, and they were suggested things like having more institutionalized support and more formal channels for communication. I'll now hand the time to Xian to talk a bit more about our exam format.
Yep, thanks, Sarah. So our last theme is the examination format. Next. As you can see from our survey, so students much preferred the 1-week exam papers, followed by coursework, and lastly, the 24-hour papers, which is an order of preference that is similar to the findings of the school-wide survey. Next, please. So when we looked into this topic more in depth during our focus group and interview, we found that the reason for this is because of the time and flexibility that students have in planning and managing their essays, which is why they preferred the 1-week papers. And it was also brought to our attention that this was particularly useful for neurodivergent students. But some challenges were also brought up during this format. So one prominent issue was that students were not able to reconcile the fact that the word count was so short, and yet it was still open book, and also they had an extended period of time, which led them to question how the essay was going to be graded, whether they were going to be marked similar to formative and summative standards, and the lack of clarity in this regard sort of added to stress and uncertainty. And finally, first years raised that they felt unprepared at the prospect of having to adjust to in-person exams next year. Next, please. So because our findings are largely similar to the school-wide survey, we concluded that the social policy department actually quite broadly reflects the experience of students taking at least qualitative degrees. So we condensed the experiences and incorporated student suggestions to come up with a few recommendations that we feel the school can consider. So we have 3 department-based and 2 school-based recommendations, as you can see on the screen. The 3 department-based ones are delivering clear, timely information, increasing department outreach, offering office hours and teaching support. And for the school-based recommendations, we have promoting LSE Life, expanding the types of workshops that they have, and finally reviewing the exam format and the policy on word counts. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. We understand that we've had to rush through quite a lot of our results, but we would love to hear your feedback and your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.